This is me, Robert. Some people know me. I see a lot of familiar faces here. Very nice. Thanks for joining the call. I work for a company called Radisys. I was previously with a service provider. I'm now 3.5 years with Radisys. I'm responsible for a product, and I will talk about the learnings which led to this product. So modern and advancements. I mean, everybody wants to be modern and advanced. My focus is on the end-to-end perspective. Good. It's a hot day. We want to start really with a little icy welcome here. I want to caution a bit and I want to share something with you, which honestly speaking, I have not been aware for a long, long time. A former colleague of me, Roland, who works in OSS, explained it to me 10 years ago. Roland, I don't know whether you're still with the company, but I say hello. I didn't understand at that time. Today, I can even talk about it. But of course, there's always a solution, problem, solution, breaking the ice. And then I want to talk about, what else can you do once you have such a solution? So let's get started with the iceberg. And I'm talking about networking because Radisys is a networking company. And I have the chance and opportunity to talk to many, many operators. So, and many have a network that is, I don't know whether the pointer here works like this. No, anyways, have a very simple network. Access, aggregation with a handover point, A10 NSP to other wholesale partners, then a service edge, and then a backbone. It's probably me. Never mind. I should be fine. What these layers have in common is, yes, the first two domains, they cover the service aspect. Yeah, an IP backbone is never service aware. It should not be IP router. There you have the service assurance, you have the service fulfillment. And then, and this is where I come with my little problem statement, which I understood. Then you have these stovepipes. And of course, this illustration is to some extent exaggerated, yeah? But in many telcos, we see, okay, there is a certain configuration system that is specifically for this technical domain, and it's specific tailored to a certain vendor and to a certain device. Then you have certain fulfillment processes. They are all specific. Again, I'm exaggerating to some extent for this very device and for this very purpose of the device and for this specific vendor. And this holds true across the entire access domain, be it cable, be it twisted pair copper, be it coax, FWA, whatnot. And it's the same on the BNG side, yeah? Again, I used to work for an operator. It was very difficult at the time to introduce another BNG vendor in there because there is this silos, yeah, or it was this silos. And this is, by the way, what we again find at many, many operators. The lower part, also for the backbone, that is called networking. So whenever we participate in an RFQ, we talk to networking people here, and they say, okay, I'll have this box, and this box is supposed to help me with this and this function, and then you get a requirements list with 1,000 line items, and you are requested to say comply, not comply, partially comply, or make it compliant. But then others say the rest is OSS, and actually I don't care about it because I'm part of the networking department. And this leads to the iceberg I want to allude to, is that coming from the BSS, there is a fan out of complexity that starts on a service level, on a per subscriber level, and then it goes into technical domain, then it goes in the right technology, because a domain has a certain technology. You wouldn't put the BNG somewhere else or an OLT somewhere in your backbone, most likely not. And then, of course, you have it per vendor, because if you have a large enough network, you certainly want to be multi-vendor capable. So this is really my problem, but you can actually reduce complexity. Some people try to make fun and say, complexity, if you don't solve it here, you push it somewhere else. But I believe there is ways, I don't say this statement is wrong, but there is ways to make, complexity go away to a certain extent. And this is what the proposal is about. And just treat a device as a device, a box as a box, and a process is a process. So, I mean, when I came out yesterday from the train station, I stopped by this BMW dealer. Yeah, they have these beautiful cars. And, I can't imagine that BMW builds tires or asks their suppliers to build tires for the left-hand side, and then they scratch their heads and say, well, what am I supposed to do about the right-hand side of my car? They probably reuse similar tires, yeah? I'm not an expert on this, but, just an analogy. So, and we said a device is a device and the process is a process. And if you want to build your network, you don't have thousands of processes. Maybe you only have 10 real core processes, and they will take you 80, 90% of the ways. Good. Breaking the ice. Again, let's, what is this, this smaller iceberg where we have been able to crack away some of, the ice? Well, first of all, starting from the bottom, treat boxes as boxes. And I don't mean this in any, demeaning way. Boxes is good. We as Radisys, we also offer hardware. Yeah, great hardware. But I know also, I see faces here, also other companies have great hardware. Don't get me wrong. So I definitely want to have competition there and differentiation. But box is a box, a process. You could actually introduce a layer where you say, well, actually, I unify how I build my network across those technical domains. This allows me to recycle a lot. I only have to invent the wheel on the left-hand side once and can recycle on the right-hand side. And then, of course, I have to have small adapters. They are called OLTC, EPUC. I don't know whether you can see from the back, where you make the technology-specific translation. And this is something which helps you to be truly multi-vendor. Again, complexity doesn't go away completely, but you can push the complexity to a layer where you can actually handle it quite well. And such an OLTC, to give you an example, to be less abstract here, could be a wonderful TR-413 implementation, an interface that is standardized, and standardization is never ended. Yeah, it can always be better. So we are working on this. Also as Radisys, we are pushing a lot with interop tests. But it could also be Volta. Yeah, I was part of pushing Volta 2016. One of the main achievements we wanted to achieve at the time was really this multi-vendor. We wanted to do plug and play. And when I talk to network operators, and again, don't get me wrong, yeah, but they have a problem recruiting the right talent. They always tell me, okay, I have to ramp down stuff. I'm not in for more complexity. Guys, make my network rather plug and play and don't bring in more complexity. Good. Time is running fast. Let me go into the benefits of such an approach. And I'm happy to receive you later on at the break to discuss whether you see similar challenges or benefits in this. Please do challenge us. I'd love to get feedback. Yeah, that's only my narrow-minded view of what I've seen in the world. So again, same processes. There's a kind of repetition. Yeah, we can reuse those processes. We can also reuse data models, information models. That is something very, very powerful, because if you want to have a live inventory, and nowadays you want to detect your inventory, you don't want to say, well, I plan everything down to the SFP, and then the field technician unfortunately plugs the SFP in the wrong port, and all of a sudden it doesn't work. You want to detect it. So you need to have very flexible data and information models. And of course, you can recycle them, because why is a CPU load on an access node different from the CPU load of a BNG, or the signal that you measure on an SFP? You can recycle those things. Device adapter, I talked about it. Yeah, southbound, they speak specific, and of course there is different chipsets on the market. Fortunately, I have to say, devices work slightly differently, and this is where companies have great IPR. They have patented it. That's why southbound we speak technology specific, but northbound we speak to whatever a unified network automation software talks to. Doesn't matter which protocol, by the way. Talk about this in a second. The beauty of this, and I should emphasize this most, if you get rid of technology specifics in your OSS, you make your OSS much more lightweight. And your OSS colleagues, if there are any here, wonderful, they will love it. Because why should I know in my OSS which line card is now end of life and how I manage, in this chassis, which line card? Why should they know? They should have generic processes. And this is really, again, I'm repeating myself, how you potentially could achieve multi-vendor. Makes the OSS much, much smaller. You just work with intents going down. A beauty is if you have a layer that goes really across, you can build beautiful things with that because you have an entire view over your network. You can see any kind of service flow, and you can maybe introduce multi-BNG because you work with multiple flows. And I see now Bruno leaving the room, unfortunately. He proposed something very nice in Hong Kong, network slicing, the SDN way. I will talk about it. Hopefully he's coming back later. But again, if you use a unified information model, similar data objects, if you have really normalized data, you can also feed your AI much, much better. I mean, I'm not an expert on AI, yeah? Whatever I read is feed your AI with good data, then it comes back with good results. But shit in, shit out. I think this still holds true, unfortunately. Good. Why is Radisys at this show? Yeah, because we love standards. We are way too small to say we can go without any standards, yeah? So BBF is definitely, we also, in terms of resources, put our emphasis. I don't want to list them all, but just the ones that are for this particular problem at our heart. Of course, we have the Cloud CO, and there we definitely want to look in and help to improve whatever is there. To work on processes, especially. I mentioned already the TR413. That is definitely for access nodes a very important interface. We also want to help in interoperability 414. This is where I think Fran, I don't know, I don't see him right now, is pushing a lot from the Radisys side. We are also working on BNG, TR459, and very, very important is 474 as well. This 474 subscriber session steering. If you have any questions, talk to Hans-Jörg, talk to Jonathan. I don't know whether Jonathan Newton from Vodafone is here in the room. Talk to them. They are leading these groups. Once you have this possibility, you can, if you have implemented it, you can really do very nice things that help you in migration, multi-BNG capability. That is really powerful and helps to solve real-life problems. Northbound, we engage more and more with TMF and also the Linux Foundation. Again, Volta, we are still very much pushing this. We have requests from operators also asking in Volta, but this is not, either or. We embrace those three as example completely as Radisys. Good. We have built a product. I'm responsible for this product. And I should really say, without Deutsche Telekom, now I'm speaking it out, we would not have such a product. I want to thank Deutsche Telekom very much for collaborating on this. It is really almost a perfect partnership. If I can say this without my wife in the room, this is really nice and it works very well. We are having success. Look up my YouTube videos from 2017. I don't think we have stuck to the timelines, but Radisys and DT really work hand in hand here. And we have built this product that has a control and orchestration layer southbound, that has a management layer, something you might be very, very familiar with. And in the control, we put anything in there that has to do, say, with IP, with label management, with topology discovery. This is how we detect the telemetry data. This is how we build the device adapter southbound. And again, I don't care about protocols. Protocols is something we can talk to IT people. There might be good reasons why you use netconf on one end. There could be gRPC, which is mainly used by Volta, GNMI, whatnot. There is different use cases. They all can make sense. And it's just IT at the end, I would say, as long as you have the data. And then you can talk to the devices southbound. And here I should also mention besides DPU, OLT, and thanks to for UFI especially, who gave permission for showing the pictures in here, you could also easily add a CMTS in here. I think this is something which I would love to emphasize here. We have another great customer, and thanks to this customer, we are now also discovering that the same model, which was originally invented to cater for fiber, the future, legacy copper, including DPUs, but it can also easily applied, well, not quite easily, but it can be very well applied to CMTS, so to coax cable. And that is actually, that was my hope, but now we have it black on white. And this is great. So northbound, of course, management, again, to give you an example of these key processes, which I talked about early before, the 10, if you will. It's lifecycle management. You need to update your network with firmware every now and then. You want to, again, manage your services. You want to take and aggregate, correlate, enrich inventory data, because at the end, you want to pump it to an AI. Everything needs to be secured. You need to have a proper authentication and access methodology. Of course, if you run it in modern cloud software, of course, you want to have connection to your CI/CD pipe. And northbound, as I tried to say before, you talk about intents, having a graphical user face, if you will, but you can also talk to others. And then you have telemetry handover, maybe to your favorite AI, have diagnostics for your service, for your level 1 service people who actually want to do some detection if the customer still calls. Yeah, good. This is really one screenshot here. So it is real. Yeah, this is not slideware. It is real. We can detect the topology of a network, and we treat, this is probably not really nicely discernible. I can give you later on a zoom in on my laptop, is that a DPU and an OLT are completely treated the same. A device is a device and a process is a process. Good. If you have such a system, and I tried really to conclude in 2 minutes from now, because I see the time running, and to maybe open up for questions. Network slicing. Yes, we have fans, and fans is a great thing. Don't get me wrong. But we believe if you have a software like the one I just explained to, you can also make the slicing happening in the layer above. So don't need to go to the network node, but you can do it actually in your IT system, yeah? And it doesn't matter whether you call it OSS or NT. Just imagine you have a controller, and then you have some access node, maybe an OLT, and then a handover point. Typical networks, which we see in open access providers, say OpenReach, NBN, maybe FiberCop. I'm not so sure about FiberCop. I do not know that well. But this could be a typical network where the VNO says, I request this line with these parameters. This is what I want. Please build it to me. We could potentially take the request and say, well, let's check whether in this area, I mean, again, we are talking about physics, yeah, still, because there should be a line somewhere to a customer. Can this request be served? Do I have sufficient resources to serve it? And that can be really even broken down to chip level resources, if you will. We don't have this yet, but potentially it could be. There is no end. And then you could feedback, yes, can be built, execute, or no, maybe with these and that parameters. It can be, be more complicated, this decision tree. And then the SDN controller would basically implement the subscriber session completely automatically, feedback and say, this is my report status, it is handled, or it is done. Here is basically your interface where you can retrieve the API data like telemetry. Question is, if I was an ISP, would I want to know the fan speed of the access node which served my customer? And this is debatable. Some people might think, yeah, it is needed. I have not talked to an operator yet, but maybe that is my limited view on the world, that this is needed. At the end, I want to have something that is pretty prevalent here in Europe, a bitstream access, for instance. And as long as the line fulfills my parameter, if I can get basic performance telemetry information, I might be good. So again, we'll make a check against this fans/network slicing here, a reality check. And we believe what the controller does, we are pretty close already. For number 1 and 2, yeah, I hope you can see this. So the request from the VNO and how it is handled by the infrastructure provider. This is where we want to put more energy in standardization, because we believe this is definitely multi-operator, so most likely also multi-vendor. So this definitely requires inter-op discussions. So, summary, look at the network horizontally across all the technical domains. Look vertically at it, including all the, say, FCAPS fulfillment functions if you want. Look at it holistically. Talk to your OSS people. Don't just do networking. Or if you're from the OSS, talk to the networking side. Radisys, together with its key partner, Deutsche Telekom, has built such a system. It is there. Nothing is ever perfect, yeah. Next year, it will be even better. And standardization for us is really instrumental. That's why we are here. That's why we are giving this speech. And yeah, last thing is 474 could potentially do network slicing the SDN way of doing things. So, and our contribution is, and I want to warmly invite you guys, and only to the people who are very nice and clap now hands after this presentation, and to come to our booth later on at 22:04 during the break and get some ice cream. So that is
ice cream. All right. That's going to get everyone going.
Thank you.
That's all you have to do is say ice cream and people will clap. Well, so you mentioned, and you're in product management for the SDN management and controller and so forth. So standardization is important, and obviously your work here at the Broadband Forum is key. But what what would you like to see, and what help would you need from the industry and whatever? Yeah. And if you have questions, please come to a mic.
Yeah. I think we should not be too fine granular with our standardization. That would be my wish. When I talk to operators, they are typically scared away with what is called disaggregation. And if you go too fine deep in things that are technically possible, it doesn't mean that they potentially get consumed by the market. So be careful with that. But what we do with TR413, if we could achieve something similar also on the BNG side, real standardization, so that we can also rather easily, like with 414, integrate maybe BNGs, service edges. That would be brilliant.
Hi, Robert. Thank you for a brilliant presentation.
You get ice cream.
That's why I came. The question I have is, I deal a lot with the OSS people that you talk about. Mm-hmm. And as an operator, we've got all of these different key business processes. One of those is provisioning the network and the services. And with that, using intents and everything you've described, we've kind of been quite successful at that. Everyone sees the value. We can delegate the complexity to the SDN controllers. But then in the same breath, the other key business process to do with network assurance, I get the OSS people saying, well, I need to know how the network is set up, because I need to send an engineer and tell him exactly what port and where exactly it is so that they can fix it. So how do we deal with that in this setup?
Thanks, a brilliant question, really almost like ordered. No, it was not. Thanks, Roger. What I have probably not emphasized enough, there is setups. I mean, wherever we come, there is legacy already in there. And there is good reasons why systems are built that way. So we also have the possibility to federate this information to an existing, maybe assurance system. So we could, for instance, to go directly beyond your question, where the SFP is plugged in, we could federate this information to something. Another operator asked us whether we could use they have an Oracle system. I don't want to do advertisement for something, but we have investigated to exactly hand over this information. You can use it in our system, but you can also federate it to another system and deal with that. Was this helpful?
Yes, well, I had the beep, so I won't follow. But thank you. I'll catch you in the break.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we will have some time after. Robert, thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you.
And